Hi and welcome back to LDF-Designs. In today's video I'm going to do a demonstration using Encaustic. I have prepared this little walnut monolith with some of the stucco mixture, some concrete mixture, and then I made a little paper clay button and decided to use it on this as kind of a bowl. So I used the concrete and drywall mixture in order to secure that onto the piece, and at this point I'm just warming up the piece and getting ready to start applying my first layers of encaustic. So this darker gray area that you see is actually a pre-mixed concrete. You can buy it in varying sizes at the home goods store. I found that it is a little easier to work with the pre-mixed product than mixing my own. I added this on top of the stucco mixture just because I wanted to create a little contrast in color. When I'm using all of these different products, I do like to make sure I'm getting a good fuse for this first base layer of encaustic. I apply it fairly thickly as I have a lot of texture, a lot of deep grooves, and then when I apply the heat, I am making sure that it goes all the way back to a liquid state and begins to absorb into these different materials that I have on my surface. So this first layer I tend to, again, some artists would say overfuse, but with the early layer it's just really important that you get that base layer absorbed into whatever your surface is, so that as you begin to build your layers they won't peel off later. Because I'm putting it on so thickly, I had some areas that I wanted to clear some of it back off. So that's what I'm doing here, is just cleaning off some drips, cleaning off some areas where the encaustic became very thick, and then I'll just keep reapplying it. I didn't really have a strong sense of where I wanted to go with this piece color-wise when I started. I have 3 or 4 different colors on my palette, including this white, and so decided to just start adding some layers of color and the clear and see where it went. I am always needing to make some intuitive choices, as I like the texture that the raw materials create on my surface. The stucco and the concrete, I really like those textures. And when I apply the encaustic, sometimes I can lose that texture a little bit because the encaustic will fill in a lot of the gaps. So it's definitely, for me, one of the things that I'm always practicing is finding that balance of maintaining the really strong texture that I'm creating with those raw products, and also applying enough encaustic to let the encaustic do what it does best. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Basically what I'm trying to explain is that sometimes I struggle a little bit because I don't want to cover up some of that raw texture with the encaustic, but I also know that the encaustic can create its own textural aesthetic. So just finding that balance in each piece that I create can be challenging sometimes. So after I cleaned up some of those areas, peeling back some of that extra encaustic, I decided to pull out this string. It's used in cooking, so this is what a lot of chefs use to tie different things together when they're baking items, but it is an all natural product. I believe it's cotton, and so I went ahead and dipped that into the encaustic, well, at least the tip of it, to get it started, and now I'm just winding that around and then adding encaustic back on top of it, again to create a different element and some texture. Once I apply this encaustic, then I will give it a fuse and make sure that it is secured to the monolith. Now I'm adding some of that cerulean gray to the string so that it has a little more of a color variation. I wanted to create a little bit more color with it, so added that onto the top of it and then giving it a light fuse. It will run off of the string and onto the surface, so if that's something you don't want to have happen, you need to apply a very small amount and fuse very lightly and carefully. So at this point I wanted to just increase some texture points. I've used this little round sponge in the past. I have several of them. I found them at a discount store for, I think they were 10 cents each or something like that. So I bought probably 50 of them. And I can use them to create circle texture, or I can roll it around on there. I've done several different things with it, can create lines with it. They're basically small paint rollers made out of foam, and I dip them into the encaustic and then press the encaustic onto the piece. I also have a pasta roller here that has some dots that it makes. Again, just making different texture and whatnot. I also decided to pull out some of my fabrics and add some fabric to the piece, and then I will apply encaustic over those as well, just to create more areas of interest. I also have some antique gold encaustic and have been trying to add that into some of my pieces. So again, just decided to go ahead and put that onto this piece of fabric that I added. And then I'm just taking a plastic straw and making circles in that, trying to continue that circle theme a little bit throughout the piece. After creating all of these different areas of texture, I went ahead and pulled out my tar and started to apply the tar onto the piece. I decided to go ahead and apply it to two sides, work it in as well as I could, and then I used vegetable oil to remove the excess. and then I will repeat the same process on the other two sides. Oftentimes once I have the tar, or if I'm using oil paint or pan pastels on there, I will go ahead and continue to make marks even though I have that tar on there, but it just helps me see where I'm putting different marks and stuff onto the piece. I just absolutely love the rich tones that the tar provides, which is why I'm drawn to it and use it a lot. I like that it not only fills into the spaces that I'm creating, but sometimes the tar itself just stays on the surface and leaves a darker area, and I love those areas of contrast and how it makes it look grungy. So it was at this point that I did shut the camera off and went ahead and put in a bunch of my nails and some of my rusty bits onto the piece. And after I did that, I decided to go ahead and apply a little more fabric onto the piece, and that's what I'm doing at this point here. So we'll get that tied into the piece next. So a long time ago, I purchased these little round stones at a store. I came across them and thought they were neat, but wasn't really sure how I would incorporate them. At the time that I purchased them, I had not been doing encaustic long at all, and I wasn't sure of the best way to get those to adhere onto any of my pieces. So today's the day. I'm going to go ahead and put 3 of them inside this bowl, which you'll see momentarily. And then once I get done with this step, I pretty much shut the camera off. I sat with the piece for a day or two and then decided to go back and add some pigment to the surface of the piece. So I'll have some pictures of this over on my Instagram page, and you can see some of the other changes that I made to it. But at this point, I went ahead and put a little of the encaustic down in the bowl, pressed these stones into it, and now I'm just drizzling some more encaustic around and inside there, and we'll fuse that, and they have stuck pretty good on there. So that seemed to work out pretty well since they are somewhat porous. So this is where I ended up when I shut the camera off. Again, if you want to see the other additions that I've added to this piece, you can certainly find those over on my Instagram page. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you the next time.